It had been a busy summer, and I had a lot of things I wanted to accomplish. I'd been working on projects in May and June, and as July approached, I realized something that Matt told me. The whole purpose of buying the property was to relax and enjoy the scenic outdoors, to hang out with friends, and to disconnect from the world. So, Cooper and I made an effort to spend time hanging with friends. We even had a chance to go on a boat trip on a beautiful Adirondack lake. The time away from the property allowed me to recenter myself and really helped to lower the stress levels. Between working a full-time job and then another full-time job at the property trying to get things done, it was a pretty stressful summer. Having milled up some wood, the next project I wanted to tackle was the kitchen. The kitchen was fairly uneven, and I spent a lot of time there between work and preparing and eating meals. The slight pitch to the ground caused you to stand at an angle, and the roots and rocks would trip you as you walked around, making the kitchen and dining area uncomfortable. I set up my trail cam on the hill above the kitchen, and I captured a friendly visitor. We had several visitors on the property, including Walter, a woodchuck, who decided to take up residence underneath my newly minted shed. In addition to the ground being uneven, it was mostly dirt, stomped clear by the constant tread of my feet because I spent so much time there. When the rain would fall, mud would splash up on my newly made picnic table, which was frustrating, so I thought I'd fix it. I bought 2 cubic yards of crusher run gravel and decided to build myself a floor. Alright, so this is a super bonus project. This hill may not look it, but it is completely unlevel. You can see it drops 3.5 inches across 8 feet. So when you're working in the kitchen, you're constantly standing at an angle. So my plan is I had 2 yards of crusher run dropped. That's a mix of rock from 1.5 inches all the way down to powder. And it's supposed to be able to compact down. So the idea is I will cut a sloping piece of board 8 feet long to square up the top there. Another one 8 feet long, same size, to square up the top there. We'll stake them in as you see with these maple stakes. It literally just has to hold the board, and then I will try and clean things up and saw it off. And then backfill from the boards to the hill to get a level surface in here. Hopefully this will work as expected and it will pack down. If not, I may wind up having to dig it all out and then mix some mortar mix in with it to get it to pack down and be tight. I understand there's roots here and it's going to crack. That's why I want to just use gravel. It'll be easier to maintain if I can pack it down tight so that it's like a stone patio. And then the roots grow and it pops up the next year. I can always wet it and tamp it back down again. So this is the plan. Now whether I will get to this weekend is a different story. I've been going nonstop for the last almost 2 months since I got here in May. And I'm tired, so I may take a few days off. So I tried to dig it out a little bit. There's a limit to what I can do because of the roots and rocks. But I have this wooden barrier, and now I'm going to staple some weed block down. And then I have 2 cubic yards of crusher run. It's going to be way more than I need for this, but I'd eventually like to do a pad underneath the table as well. So this whole cooking area is nice and flat and smooth. That's the goal anyway. We'll see how it goes. So this is my flooring material for the kitchen. And you can see it's a mix of everything down to small sand and up to about 1.5 inches. There's some bigger ones in there that I'll have to pick out. But I think this is around 2 yards of crusher run. So I'm not going to be able to get to it today, so I'm going to cover it up to keep the rain off of it. But this will be going in that perimeter that I showed you.
The following day and the days that followed carried on with the tedious task of moving the rock wheelbarrow by wheelbarrow up the hill. I'm 59 years old, and this rock is heavy, and over the next couple of days, I would move an enormous amount of rock, but there was something very satisfying about accomplishing a task that was hard. This kitchen project started in early July, but the total kitchen renovation would run the entire summer.
All right, so partway through the flooring job, this is what we got so far. This will be filled in, and then I'll do a top coat where I mix some lime in to combine with the dust and sand and hopefully make it a little bit more like a concrete floor. We'll see. It's an experiment. It may or may not work, but it's way better already than it was.
The lime that I purchased turned out to not be the right kind. It was gardening lime instead of mortar lime, but it did act to pack the floor down. I built up the floor by wheelbarrowing the rock over and then leveling it out as much as I could using a rake. I'd then stomp it down and move on to the next layer. Little by little, the floor built up, starting at the outer edges and then working towards the counter areas. July 2024 in New York was hot and sticky, and the horseflies were terrible. But with every layer that I built up, the floor seemed to firm up under my feet, and it seemed more and more like a permanent fixture of my property. You can see in the background how early in the summer this was. The shower enclosure had not been completed yet, and I was still using the 35-gallon water barrel instead of the IBC tote I would get later. Throughout the summer, I would work on several projects concurrently. While I was working on this floor, I'd also started rocking over the inside of my fire pit with natural stone that I'd gathered from around my property and off the borders of the washed out areas of my driveway. Fill the wheelbarrow, push the wheelbarrow, dump the wheelbarrow, rake out, lather, rinse, repeat. Little by little, the floor built up, becoming more stable with each load of gravel raked in. Despite the lime being the wrong type, its powdery texture and small size allowed it to infiltrate in between the rocks, especially after I watered the kitchen floor. Over the next few weeks, the rain would wash the mix of powdered stone dust, small rocks, and lime down into the rocks, leaving a homogeneous gravel floor. Working on this floor would wind up being great practice for the next project, which was the floor area underneath the picnic table or the dining room. When I started this project, I had no idea what moving 50 or 60 wheelbarrow loads of gravel would be like. Throughout the course of the summer, I lost around 20 pounds, and I think a big part of it was this job right here. But all horrible things must come to an end, and eventually the raking was complete, and the only thing left to do was stomp down the gravel. 1, 2, 3, cha-cha-cha, 4, 5, 6, cha-cha-cha. No, really, this was boring. I am literally just walking around on this gravel. But soon it's done, and the floor is complete.
It is in and packed about as flat as I'm going to be able to get it without having a tamper or a roller. But it's pretty good. There is a slope, and that was by design. I want the water to shed off of this because we do get a lot of water around here. So the next step is to, I've mixed a whole top coat with lime, as you saw me do there for a couple wheelbarrows. And the next step is to water this all in really good and then walk it as much as I can to try and pack it down some more. The water should infiltrate between all the different size particles and help it to settle in a little bit. So that's the next step.
After the kitchen floor was complete, I moved on to the dining room floor. You can see I'm using these offcuts from the top of a log that I milled up as the edges. I just roughly split the board using a long freehand chainsaw rip cut down the middle. I then used a Forstner bit on an extension to drill out the holes that would accept a maple pin later. I cut several, I think 4 per side, maple pins, each one of them about a foot long, and drove it down to secure the side piece to the ground. As these pieces were a continuous thickness all the way down, they didn't slope to match the hill. So I had to build up the lower ends at the edge of the hill where it dropped off more with little stone and mortar walls. This was a fun project. Over the next few weeks, I would fill the enclosed area with gravel, completing the dining room floor and joining them together. With the floors in the dining room and the kitchen complete, it was time to move on to the next project, replacing the countertops in the kitchen with wood that I'd milled up from the aspen tree that I had to drop behind my tent. When planed flat and cut to length, this would make a great live edge countertop in my kitchen.
It's still rough and it needs to be planed some more, but this wood is going to dry and shrink and it's probably going to twist. So this is planed good enough. This is the countertop for the kitchen. The shelving that goes next to the sink in the kitchen, this is going to be the new countertop. So we're going to get a lot of rain tomorrow. I'd like to get this in there and screwed down where it's under a cover before we get rain. Otherwise it's just going to absorb a bunch of water. It's dried a little bit and I've been able to plane it a little bit, but as you can see, it's not taken to planing very well because it's still super wet. So the more I can get it under cover, the more I can get it out of the weather, the better chance I have of it starting to dry out. It's already checking and cracking. I expect we're going to get more of that. But again, if I can screw it down, that'll help to keep it from moving as much. And I'll try and screw just a few screws in here and try to keep it towards the middle so the wood has a chance to move.
I didn't realize that after spending probably 2.5 weeks redoing the kitchen cabinets in my Florida house that I would be putting new countertops on the kitchen in my property in the Adirondacks. But that's the way it is. But like every other project where you're fixing an existing piece of infrastructure, you first have to unload all of the stuff that you've accumulated. Surprisingly, in 2 months, I've accumulated a whole lot. Once everything had been removed from the countertop, I was able to start disassembling it, removing the wooden deck boards that were left over from building the tent deck and getting it ready to put on the new aspen countertops. The boards I removed wouldn't go to waste. Some of them would become braces for underneath the new countertop. The rest would actually become a path across the small stream up the hill. The side support for the countertops had been left long, So I'm using a Japanese pull saw here to cut it flush with the rails that support the countertop. The supporting boards were custom cut, some of them so tight that you had to hammer them into place, but that just made the countertop stable. Remember, these counters are suspended between trees using only all thread wrapped around either side of the trees. So it's a pressure fit, and making sure that you get a tight fit all the way down stabilizes the countertop. With the final board in place, it's time to put in the new Aspen live edge countertops. I know these look rough, but they'll be thickness planed down and then sanded smooth and a coat of epoxy applied when I return next year. Having solid wood countertops was a huge improvement to the kitchen, providing more space and just making it look cleaner. I was glad to see the slabs of wood from the tree that I had to cut down went to good use, and it really was an enjoyable project, even though sometimes it was difficult to get these screws in upside down. It doesn't look like it, but at this point of the day, it was getting dark, and it was getting difficult to work in the kitchen. But I muddled through and got it put down, and it all worked out.
New countertop for the kitchen. It's rough and it's going to take a while to dry. So by the time I come back in the spring, I'd imagine these boards are going to shrink. That's why I only put a single screw on each one of the supporting boards for each side. That should allow the wood to shrink around the screw. Then I'll just have to take the screws out, tighten it up, screw it back down, plane the whole surface flat. It'll be dry at that point and it'll take the planer better. And then it'll be good, but it's a solid 2-inch thick aspen top for the kitchen.
The countertop was done. Time to load it back up with the required items. Over the next few weeks, I would repeat the process to the left of the sink, finishing the counter in the kitchen. Both of these are designed and built in the same way, and both will be refinished when I get back, likely with some version of the wax oil that I made.
And here it is, loaded down with everything that is normally on my countertop. I still have more space, like I did not have any space in front of these items or in front of the stove before. So even though it is pretty heavily loaded, sorry, it's getting dark out. Even though it's pretty heavily loaded, it matches up pretty well with the top of the sink and gives me more counter space and looks, I think, 100% better. Used to look like that. Now it looks like this. 100% better.
Thanks for following along and watching these videos. I really appreciate all the comments you guys give. And like and subscribe if you'd like to keep getting updates and see all the newest videos as they come out. Thanks again for watching.